Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the #1 source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
I've never been more emphatic in my conviction that Evan is exactly what every hockey GM, executive, former player type is than yesterday when Yzerman said, just straight up admitted, yeah, I was daydreaming.
That's like when you're on a Zoom call and you're multitasking or not paying attention on mute, and all of a sudden you hear your name and you have no context to what was said, and you're just like, what generalities can I say to get out of this hole that I've dug myself into?
First 6 months with that department, you try to talk your way out of it and just read expressions. After that, it's just, straight up, you lost me there. Can you repeat all that?
I was shocked.
It was, I should have known better. I actually made a mistake online, believe it or not, but I tried to say like, hey, this is just like a moment of levity. There's plenty else in that presser if you want to be mad and if you are justifiably angry to hang on to. And that was stupid of me. Like, I'm not even being facetious. That was dumb of me because people are just not in the mood to laugh right now, very obviously. No. And I think for us, it's a little bit of like, I'll call it the steeliness, but definitely like the numbness of the last decade of this, where it's like, oh, yeah, that's not the biggest issue of the day.
Yeah, if you're a casual fan, you follow the team when they're doing well, you follow them when they're winning, and then you coincidentally see that clip, you're probably freaking out.
Yeah. Like if I saw that with the Tigers in like the lowest of the Tigers' lows, I don't follow the Tigers as closely, very obviously, as we covered the Red Wings. I probably would have had a similar thought of like, oh, okay, this is funny. Winning fixes everything. Losing ruins everything.
Exactly.
All right, folks. Yzerman speaks. McLellan speaks. We're going to speak about it. Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we are going to talk all things Red Wings media presser now that the GM and the head coach have spoken after a little bit of a delay there. We're going to give you updates on what we learned from that. A uniquely toned presser with lots of takeaways, which isn't always the case when Steve Yzerman speaks. We are going to get into updates on the Red Wings that we got from that, as well as the Grand Rapids Griffins, Sebastian Cossa. We're going to get into NHL news, the Stanley Cup Playoffs, news off the ice, our prospect profile, and more before we get into overtime. Before all that, I want to quickly let you know that the Winged Wheel Podcast is primarily supported by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. If you want to support the show, you get access to benefits like our bonus overtime episodes, which record right after these main ones. We have fun. I throw bloopers in there. We have thoughts with Evan. Any questions that didn't make the main show get answered on there. It's a great time. It's just pretty much hanging out with the boys is what it is. We honestly should just have a couple cold ones on that as well.
Nothing like an 8 a.m. beer to start your Wednesday.
True sicko off-season behavior. You also get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. It's a phenomenal community, and you're automatically entered into all of our giveaways. For example, in season, we give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game, going directly to our Patreon supporters. And in the off-season, we have some other fun stuff planned. Stay tuned. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. When Steve Yzerman started speaking, and I won't call it like a fully prepared statement because it's not like he was reading line by line, but he had his notes. And that's not how we see Steve Yzerman approach these pressers. And when he started, I went, oh, yeah, they're feeling something here. And it didn't take long for it. Like I sensed nervousness to call it out. Like his voice was wavering a little bit for sure. But I think he was pissed off. I think he was angry. I think he was passionate, and it's up to the listener here to infer whatever kind of like positive or negative, impression of it. That's up to you. I'm not trying to say it was one way or the other, but he was definitely angry, specifically related to the comments from Larkin and the fan base about the trade deadline is why this team didn't succeed. And he was passionate, which is why I think all sounded so intense, but you don't always see what's the best way to phrase this? Like locked in a presser, Steve Yzerman. Like he usually, he has a way of being short and blunt and might seem cold, but he usually has some banter with the press. And that was intense, at least at the very start.
I don't mind that at all, though. There are expectations of this team now. Taking a step backwards this year, obviously, really igniting the fan base, and you would hope the front office as well, because they're at the point where they can't take a step backwards. Now, you could argue, where's the blame go for that step backwards? And it's not exactly like Steve Yzerman was standing there in a hot dog costume asking who did this, but there was blame that wasn't just on him. And I know we talked about the Larkin thing a bit, and I know I really rallied against, I hated that attitude from Larkin, even though it was understandable. And apparently Yzerman didn't like it either, because he was not subtle about his points on the matter, which is what surprised me more than anything, because yeah, Yzerman usually is blunt, but he doesn't take direct shots or give too much direct hints as to what he's thinking. There were a lot of points in this press conference where he wasn't sugarcoating where his mentality was at.
He did a real art of the deal move at the end of it too, and said, if you want to ask Dylan Larkin about our conversation, he's more than welcome to say what we talked about. And he put the ball right in his court.
So the next question, I have to say, like the next question after the prepared statement where Yzerman understandably tried to head it off, and then he fully expected that it would still be Larkin first question after that. I think Helene St. James asked it. Fair. And the very next one was, tell us more. Was this about Larkin? And he said all the things you'd expect him to say. No, it wasn't about Larkin. I addressed this with him directly. And as Evan said, it's up to you whether you want to ask him and he discloses, but I'm not going to disclose it here. That's what he's going to say. But yeah, in a little bit of detail here, Yzerman opened up and read that, his statement, his notes about the trade deadline, and there weren't opportunities to do so without mortgaging top prospects or first round picks in a way where the return didn't make sense, and referenced later on that like, there's so many times where I'm like, oh my god, it feels like he's talking to like Larkin and whatever other Red Wings directly here, but he's like, Montreal and St. Louis were out of the playoffs, they made no moves, and then they made the playoffs, and you're like, okay, yeah, you're feeling like that. That's someone who's like argument in the shower kind of point you bring up. And it like fair or unfair, like there's a lot of little moments like that in there where it's like it was a defensive posture talking about the rebuild and the job. And Brad mentioned like this isn't so extreme where it's like completely deflecting blame away or accepting all blame. There's parts where it fell in the middle, and Yzerman acknowledged like, we have to do better, things like that. But in all, Yzerman and McLellan sitting next to each other, they very much had an approach of, yeah, there are things that could have gone better, but this team needs to execute better.
Yeah, the McLellan made the point, which obviously Yzerman took his direct shots, but I think the biggest shot across the bow of everything in that press conference was saying it's up to the leadership group to raise the morale of the room. That's what we pay them to do. And again, that wasn't just at Larkin. And I know when we talked about it previously, especially in the free fall they were in March, we were kind of talking about the whole leadership group needing to step up in a moment like this. And apparently they very much feel the same way, saying, this is your job. This is why you get paid millions of dollars. If you're going to sit here and whine about the trade deadline and then free fall afterwards, what do you want us to do about it? It's your job. This is literally your role. And yeah, like I said, that one wasn't even subtle. That was directly spoken. So it's hopefully a good wake-up call to that dressing room.
Todd made a really good point as well to say, leadership doesn't always have to be from the guys wearing letters. He's like, we've got guys who've played hundreds or thousands of games in the NHL on this team. He's like, he wasn't just talking about guys on the ice, right? Like they've got Alex Tanguay, and he's not saying Alex Tanguay's being a sourpuss or something like that. He's just saying, in this organization, we have guys who have so much leadership that they can bring on the ice, off the ice, and everybody needs to be better.
The quotes that stand out to me, one of them actually where I was like, oh, all right. Yzerman said, I'm counting on our leaders, our best players to give us a morale boost. I think the exact wording was, that's what they're paid for and that's what's expected from them. Something like that. The morale boost, there's a flag for you to tie directly to Larkin's statements. And McLellan, to Brad's points, I really loved when he talked emphatically, like a bunch of times, about all the times they pissed away points. And this isn't new for McLellan. Like, watch any of his post-game or pre-game media. He's great. He'll tell you quite honestly what's going well, what's going wrong, where they're falling short. He talks about, specific games where he's like, we played ourselves out of that game. We weren't playing to win. We weren't playing for each other, and we pissed away points and opportunities, and we were a good enough team to make it, and here's exactly where we failed. So McLellan's speaking more broadly in a way where it's like, this team is good enough, but here's where we fell short. And Yzerman's, quotes about, like Brad mentioned, the leadership. The message was extremely clear. And with what Evan just mentioned about Tanguay and others as well, that I thought that was an important moment as well, because that was defending Larkin a little bit too. They started extremely pointed in terms of addressing the statements that came from the captain and might have been representing, however many other players in the team, in the leadership group. But they also said it's not all on Larkin. Like, he's out there doing media more than anyone else, but it shouldn't have to be him shouldering the blame. Like, other guys need to step up. And I think the one that's sitting biggest for me is when McLellan kind of said, when things are going good, we got plenty of leaders.
Yeah.
But when we're taking on water, and he kind of trailed off and walked sideways a little bit from continuing that statement. But we all know what he was implying there. Like, when things are going good, it's easy for it to be going good. But it's when the going gets tough that the teams that make a difference and make the playoffs and find a way to win, especially when they're not loaded with the most talent, that's when they separate themselves. And that's what the Red Wings are lacking right now. And feel how you want about the Red Wings roster and its makeup. God knows we do, a certain kind of way. But this team was there, and with different execution, could have made a difference to get into the fringes of the playoffs.
One of my biggest takeaways from the entire press conference was, I'm a believer in the Todd father. He came with receipts. He came with great answers. He was concise, clear, and he has a plan. So I leave that hour, whatever it was, of the press conference with full trust in McLellan and his ability to get this staff on board, and with a full off season, a full training camp. There's no reason why this team shouldn't be battling for a playoff spot late into April next year.
Yeah, the culture change. It's not like I believe the Red Wings have a bad culture, but I think it's hard to have a good culture in the NHL. And I fully agree. The more I see Todd McLellan, the more I'm like, even in this world of coaching tenures averaging like 2.5 years at most, I think he's the guy to come in and create the foundation for a winning culture. If it can exist within this roster, he'll be able to do it. Love what I see so far.
You may not think they have a bad culture. I may not think they have a bad culture, but based on that press conference, you know who does? Steve Yzerman and Todd McLellan. Like, it was pointed that was the overarching theme of what they really wanted to hammer home, saying this room came up with a lot of excuses and then had a lot of ways to make the playoffs, and they found ways to not do it. You flip that Montreal game, you piss away points, and one less game, they're in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like, it's 5 points, but it wasn't all that far off. So, and I think they both realize that. And I think, not that the team's going to be in for shock and awe next year, but I am excited to see what the new standard of this team looks like from day one of training camp.
So, changing how the team operates, changing their systems, giving a full offseason of Todd McLellan coming in and making it his team, that's one thing. And we'll put that to the side for now. Let's get into how Yzerman primarily, but McLellan as well, addressed the certain players, the pro scouting, the free agency contracts when they were asked. And the big preface to all of this is the way NHL GMs operate, and especially Steve Yzerman, he's not going to just disclose everything off the hop, right? He's going to say all of the right things. He's not going to come out and say, oh yeah, I'm making massive changes to the pro scouting group, and we're going to be bringing in a few new guys and getting rid of these guys, or whatever it is. It's going to be coach speak. It's going to be GM speak. But when asked about free agency contracts and pro scouting, for free agency, Yzerman pointed to, some of the shorter term contracts have actually been good and done what they wanted for the team. The longer term ones, he said, I expect more from those guys. He called that out, said they haven't been good enough. With pro scouting, talked about the group, the pro scouting group, and said, I believe in these guys. I think they're learning how the NHL works, and they're, growing together as a team. And he's like, I have full confidence in their abilities, and named who's doing what where kind of thing very quickly. Didn't come out and say, we're going to be making big changes in pro scouting. We're going to be making big changes in free agency. And, you're of two minds, right? Some people are of two minds. Listen to that. One is, well, yeah, obviously he's not going to say that in a presser. He's going to do whatever he's going to do. And that's the way NHL GMs operate. And the other is, if they run this back, I feel like I'm going to rip what little hair I have remaining in my head out in terms of the way they have operated in pro scouting free agency.
Yeah, there's a lot to digest in that relatively small answer. His first point about some of the shorter term contracts and then the longer term contracts is fair. Gostisbehere worked out really well. Perron worked out really well. Say what you want about Sprong. He delivered depth scoring for not a lot of money on a 1-year deal. And mind you, it's been a while since they've signed a contract like that, but they did work out. And yeah, the one where I'll push back is he expects more from the longer term contracts, which would be Sherratt, Holl, Copp, Compher, etc. I mean, I think they've all performed about how most people predicted based on where they were at in their career, all the circumstances around it. So it's easy to say I expected more.
What more can you get out of Ben Sherratt? He's been playing on your top pairing. You're squeezing this guy dry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm like, in defense of those guys, this is about what they are. Yes, there is room for growth within a margin of error, but not a whole hell of a lot.
Somehow they got a gallon of blood out of the stone that is Ben Sherratt. Like,
I know.
Yeah, all of a sudden, these 30-year-olds are going to find a new level to their game they didn't know existed for the first 10 years of their career.
I could see the Jonathan Bernier narrative around Ben Sherratt when he's gone, where we're like, he wasn't great, but man, with what he had to do, he did all right.
I'm telling you, man.
But yeah, and I can't even sugarcoat it. I hated his answer in regards to the pro scouting department. Like, oh, they're finding their way in this league. I'm like, no, you're at the top of your profession. You're hiring guys who are good at it, who are competent at it. And if you expect to make the playoffs, you can't keep having misses from that department. That's just the reality of it. Now, he did mention, and I don't know if you brought this up, that, he implied they took bigger swings, they got outbid. It didn't happen, which is something we theorized. And that makes sense. You can go identify the 5 best players in free agency, give them fair to above value contracts, and they say no. You can only do so much convincing. So that could very much be what happened here, which, if that is the case, hey, you tried. But I mean, I think the Red Wings are past the point where trying is acceptable.
Yeah, we talked about this a few times. It's a little bit more transparency in this department would go a long way for making fans feel a little bit better. Because if we hear radio silence and all these big name free agents are going to other teams, that's a tough look. Like, everybody wants some of these guys to come to their team. But if you say, hey, we tried, they weren't interested in coming to Detroit, or we couldn't offer the amount of money that they wanted, that helps people sort of digest the offseason a little bit better. Should the Red Wings be missing on every big name free agent? It would be nice if we didn't, but it helps put some of those nerves at ease when those things are spoken.
Where I will say, like, I actually liked or maybe agreed with the way it was handled is with respect to the fact that we don't know, it's not public knowledge, it's not part of the game, so to speak, how the pro scouting or even the amateur scouting and these back end, machines work. Like that, for all intents and purposes, that's just like a normal everyday business. And that's why you won't hear us harp on specifics or in terms of this person needs to be brought in and this person needs to be pushed out. It's not just the fact that like you don't want to play with people's jobs like that when you don't know for sure. It's at the end of the day, Steve Yzerman is the one who signs those contracts. Brad made a great point. Like they were in on other guys who just went for too much money in term, who would have been good players, but not at the price that they went in last offseason or the one before. And we talked about that when those off seasons happened. Like, we're happy they didn't sign those contracts for those guys, even if we would have liked the players. And, whose idea was it to bring in Justin Holl on a 3-year contract? Was it, Yzerman wanting to fill a gap? Was it specifically, this person, that group? At the end of the day, it was Yzerman who signed the contract. So it's cover, sure, but the buck stops with the person who heads them up. And with the way this team is structured and how Yzerman's front office is structured, he's handling that. And so that's the person you're going to continue to point to. And we've said that in the past. And to Evan's point of the transparency, I actually do think, like, Yzerman has said this a few times in terms of like, the prices were too high. We just weren't going to get in on it, stopping short of naming actual players. One thing that he said that I actually appreciated in terms of transparency is Yzerman was asked near the end of the pressers, like, do you think, this being a non-playoff team is going to continue to hurt you in terms of free agency? He's like, no, and I actually don't think it has for a while. It's like, sometimes people have their conditions of like, oh, I want to go play with my brother or my buddy, or like, I want to be in this specific place. But in terms of like us being at the bottom of the league, that's gone. He's like, it wasn't a problem last year, and I don't anticipate it being a problem this year. And that wasn't a nothing statement to me.
There's certainly a difference between Detroit and Buffalo, for example. I think that's very obvious. I think that answer would be, a GM of a team like Buffalo could say all they want. I think players are very much avoiding Buffalo unless they're from there. But I think I agree. Like, we saw with one of the players poll this year, the LCA is considered the best arena in the league in terms of amenities for players. Like, these guys are all millionaires, right? They can have summer homes wherever they want. I think I agree with what he said.
Yeah, they're going to be your neighbors.
That'd be nice, actually. I mean, they'd mow their lawn and take care of things, and their birds wouldn't shit on my car. Well, I'll save that for my therapist, though.
And like with the whole, they're not going to name all their moves thing. You think about McLellan and how he talked about Holl right after the season, kind of gassing him up after really going at him. I think Max talked about it last episode, actually. And then when asked about Tarasenko, Yzerman said, his production wasn't there, but I think his play was a bit better than his production. And he really kind of fell off this year when he let that get to him, his lack of scoring. So it's not like he called Tarasenko great this year, but it was a little bit of like a small vote of affirmation when media asked about a guy directly. And that's what you expect a GM or a coach to do. But that's where you're kind of like gripping the table going, okay, one of Holl or Tarasenko being back, and those guys represent, whatever swath of players who you think have to be removed from the team or subtracted in some way. One of them, okay. All or multiple, this summer is going to be actions speak louder than words. 100%. And I think rather than sit there and like panic about something that has or hasn't happened yet, I think you just have to walk away from that remembering this is an NHL, a hockey press conference, and Steve Yzerman just lies because that's his job. Not everything's going to be revealed here.
Yeah, and this is going to be a make or break off season for the team, because I think if there's only 2 or 3 changes on the roster right now, that's not nearly enough. I think it's got to be, you're not necessarily reinventing the wheel this offseason, but there's got to be signs that they went big game hunting for that first line left wing. There's got to be signs that they really tried to overhaul the bottom 6, because that was a huge problem. They need to add, conservatively 2 defensemen? Now, you can argue out of everything I'm saying, is that going to be internal promotions from Grand Rapids? Is that free agents? In reality, the answer is probably a bit of both. But if we're running back 90% the same roster next year, I don't think there's a single fan out there who will be satisfied.
Other takeaways and notes from the press conference. First, we already had mentioned Sean Shapiro's report of goalie coach Alex Westland not returning. The same goes for their video coach. They haven't talked about the replacements yet. They talked about promoting from within, but those are just some more back-end moves. They also were asked about players like Wallinder and Tuomisto. Again, you don't try to glean too much, but from the way Yzerman talked, it sounded like they were higher on Wallinder, and we might get an opportunity to see him. They felt he was closer to NHL ready. The goaltending conversations were funny. Like Yzerman's quote of, "We need the goalie to stop the puck more."
Is he wrong?
He's like, mad though you may be about 10 other things, he's not wrong there.
Nope, he is absolutely not.
They asked about Sebastian Cossa, and I mean, this shouldn't be a surprise for folks who have followed Cossa's season or Grand Rapids closely, and we'll talk in a second about Grand Rapids game 1 of their playoffs after talking about the presser. But he said, like, as of right now, I don't see Sebastian Cossa as ready to make the step to the NHL. He had a great first 2/3 of the season, and after the AHL All-Star break, he really kind of trailed off, and so he needs to have a big playoffs here, and then, implied off-season and training camp after that. But that was, like, he went so far as to say, yeah, Cossa, as he stands right now, isn't ready. Can't really disagree based on how you saw the season play out in Grand Rapids.
Well, needs a big playoff performance. Not a great start there last night. So
No.
To be determined.
Well, I think the Red Wings have bought themselves some more runway with Sebastian Cossa because Trey Augustine's going back to Michigan State. I don't think they want both of those guys in Grand Rapids at the same time. It's two alpha dogs vying for one position, which, maybe that works out well in terms of competitiveness. But with the way the situation lies now, that I think that makes sense. So I wasn't surprised to hear his comments on Cossa at the press conference.
There's also no surprise they reaffirmed what Patrick Kane gave us and what has heavily been reported based on Patrick Kane's comments, but mutual interest in terms of bringing Patrick Kane back into the winged wheel and keeping him on with the Detroit Red Wings. Yzerman never speaks that emphatically about, a potential free agent signing, and so you have to imagine that one's all but done. Just the details have to be sorted out at some point here. So all in all, with this presser, I think the grand summary of it is, if you think this offseason is like any other, it's not, because with the fan base and now demonstrated with, through Larkin, the team have expressed enough frustration that the front office is responding to it and kind of feels that intensity, that urgency, and that frustration. They know it's not like if they don't do it next season, it's all over in pandemonium and they're going to tear down the ALCA or anything, but this one feels different. Like Yzerman's talking about 10 years of a rebuild after 25 years of making it, and this sucks. Like the timelines are less carefree. The pressure's on.
Yeah, they're expectations now, which before the last couple seasons, it had been a long time since there had been any.
On one hand, full off season of McLellan, being Todd McLellan and instilling what he wants to in his team and structuring and framing them and breaking them down and building them up the way he wants to. And on the other hand, you have Steve Yzerman and what's he going to do with the roster. So we'll continue to cover that. And one more quick thing, actually, about the Yzerman presser. The Jake Walman question was asked and just said he's not going to elaborate. Was asked why not. He said there's things I choose not to share with you, addressing the media. We have litigated that, relitigated that, discussed that a billion times on this show, and it's very obvious where things have landed, which is, something behind the scenes happened with Walman and Yzerman and the team's perception of him, whether that was purely on ice or not, and that's that. It's not that we're not having the discussion, it's just that we've done it a million times. Absolutely nothing has changed. It was a fair question to ask, but it's at the point where, like, the storyline, the narrative, there's nothing new to beat out of that. Talk about drawing blood from a stone.
He's not going to say anything. If he did, no player is ever going to come to Detroit ever again if the GM's just airing dirty laundry, if some exists.
It's not Vancouver.
Yeah, what does this look like, Vancouver?
All right. Grand Rapids Griffins. Game 1, Calder Cup Playoffs. 4-0 loss to Texas. not great. Sebastian Cossa lets in 4, is pulled. Was told he was not happy in the tunnel, to put it gently. Someone said to me, I think there are fewer things that aren't broken in there compared to what stayed intact. And that's unsurprising, knowing Cossa and how intense he is about winning. Yeah, and it wasn't just Cossa. It's not like he, just let in 4 soft goals and everyone else was incredible. Like the Griffins looked outclassed that game. Not ready for the physicality, not ready in terms of performing in the game. Just bad start overall.
It laid an egg.
Yeah. Not much else to say other than that. If they want to turn this around, I mean, it's the AHL, right? Like, you don't have to watch too much AHL to understand the way that non-NHL hockey can, yo-yo back and forth in terms of performances, but there's going to have to be a massive yo-yo the other direction, and that's going to have to start in net as well. And you feel for Cossa too, like, poor performance. He knows it. Obviously, he's angry about it, and the context of the presser that day too has way more eyes on him than even would have been in the first place. So yeah, that has some added pressure as well.
All you can take from that game is that you hope everybody took it as a lesson. Everybody comes out pissed off next game and motivated, and we see the complete inverse of what we saw that game. Just see who rebounds and who doesn't.
And then final note here before we take a quick break. The NHL Draft Lottery, please someone throw me out the window. I yearn for the day where we don't care. Is on May 5th, which is 5 days away from the time of recording. And if you thought, wow, the NHL told you 6 days away, that's like cutting it really close. You'd be right. You want to know what's even better? Don't know what time it's at. Thank you, NHL. This is a personal gripe. I cannot stand this, man. I cannot stand this shit at all. It is so annoying.
They'll stream it in 720p as well.
Oh, they got that.
Is that a 1 or a 7?
They got their afterburners on.
Yeah.
They closed Chrome.
We could play a fun game with it. Let's see how the pick accidentally gets spoiled this time.
I think last year they didn't spoil it, right?
There was like a false alarm, like they were doing a test that leaked and it didn't end up being those teams, but still for the whole time, everybody's like, was that it? Is this it?
Oh, God. I can't stand the way they do this.
This is how I did my university homework. Gave vague details until the final moment and scraped by.
That's the NHL. Bush League seems generous sometimes. All right, we're going to take a quick break to hear from the sponsors of the Winged Wheel podcast, and when we're back, more from the world of the NHL. Back after this. All right, if you're like us and coffee's basically the fuel that keeps you going, whether it's early morning podcasts, late night game rewatches, or just grinding through another rebuild, then you need to check out Coffee Cult. These guys are serious about coffee. They only use specialty grade Arabica beans from all over the world, and they actually work with their farmers to make sure every single bean is top quality. No joke, they inspect each one, and they won't roast anything that isn't excellent. The result is super flavorful and honestly superstar level coffee. And get this, they roast to order. So when you place your order at coffeecult.com, your coffee isn't sitting on a shelf somewhere, it's roasted fresh just for you, and then it's shipped out. That's as fresh as it gets. Their dark roast is a go-to. Smooth, heavy-bodied with notes of caramel and chocolate, perfect for cold mornings at the rink. Or try something a little different like the Sumatra with chocolate and brown sugar vibes. And they've got a killer lineup of single origin coffees from places like Colombia, Kenya, Brazil, you name it. Head to coffeecult.com, that's KOFFEEKULT.com, and use code WWP to get 15% off. And if you spend over $49, shipping is free in the US. That's coffeecult.com, spelled with a K. Drink better coffee. Men, if you look in the mirror and notice your hairline creeping back faster than a coach during a media scrum, you're not alone. Life just gets busier and busier, and honestly, who has time to figure this out? So, try Hims' hair loss solutions. Skip the awkward appointments and get access to treatment without even leaving your home. They make it simple with doctor-trusted options and ingredients that can regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. Whether you're into chewables, oral tablets, sprays, or serums, you'll find something that fits your routine. The process is 100% online, which means no uncomfortable doctor visits. Just answer a few quick questions and a licensed medical provider will determine if treatment's right for you. No insurance is needed and one low price covers everything, from the treatment itself to ongoing care. Hims has hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, and they can help you get your confidence back too, and maybe keep you from looking like the next assistant coach behind the bench. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/wingedwheel. That's HIMS.com/wingedwheel for your personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/wingedwheel. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information. Welcome back. The harmonica players are, maybe their power has waned a little bit. I cannot believe that Edmonton is now up 3-2 in that series against LA. I can, because, I mean, we say all the time, it's the McDavid, Draisaitl, like, you're screwed even if they're having a bad game kind of team. But, you look back at that failed coach's challenge and some other moments, you're like, LA, did you miss a trick here?
They had their opportunity, and they still do. Like, they're only down 3-2. It's not inconceivable to think they could pop off a couple wins here. But that does feel like a huge missed opportunity because, 3-4 years in a row leading into this where Edmonton's knocked them out of the playoffs. So, yeah, I don't know what to make of that because it's not like LA's really played all that different the last 3 games. It's just now Edmonton's playing some semblance of defense and they're getting an occasional save, and it felt like that's all they needed.
This is the most Edmonton Oilers playoffs. Like, they come into every playoffs the exact same way. Like, failing in some regard, which is completely unacceptable, and their best players just bail them out. And the moment they get an average game in those departments that Brad just mentioned, then they just win a bunch, and that's how they move on round to round.
All they had to do is bring in Calvin Pickard to make some saves and get Stuart Skinner out of the crease, and that's basically changed everything for them.
Red Wings alum, man. Again, like Brad said, it's not over. 3-2. Jumping over to the East, you know what other series is 3-2? Leafs and Sens.
Catherine and I are rewatching Lost right now, and we're on.
What a lead in.
That wasn't even the punchline, but that is hilarious now that I think about it. And, they have like moments where a single character's in the woods or in the jungle by themselves, and they hear whispers, and nobody else seems to hear these things. That's the Toronto Maple Leafs right now. They are lost in the Ottawa jungle, and they are hearing the demons whisper to them, and we're watching it all unfold once again.
Just to give you a state of a typical Leaf fan mindset, I worked a late one last night, and obviously I work with a lot of Leaf fans, and it was 1-0 Ottawa in the second period, and she just looked at me and went, "If they lose this game, it's over."
They've seen it too many times.
Like, just no confidence to win a game 6 or a game 7 whatsoever. Let's be clear. I think everybody listening hates both these teams passionately, but for the good of the hockey world, we very much need to be on Ottawa's side for game 6 because the 48 hours or however long it's going to be between game 6 and 7 is going to be the most entertainment we are ever going to get online. So we need that reality to come to fruition.
It is exceptionally funny the way it really is a no-lose situation for Red Wings fans. And that's talking about a team who's watching, arch rival of a century here, and the current fan bases that you hate the most with the Sens in the playoffs. That sucks. But someone's going to have their heart broken tragically, and that's exceptionally funny.
I still can't wrap that Leafs performance last night. You can argue some demons and some bad luck and some bad bounces. They genuinely look like they didn't care to be out there last night. It's shocking for how much this has happened to them that they can still have performances like that in situations like this.
Todd McLellan just got done gassing him up, talking about Matthews and Marner growing and learning how not just to be talented, but playing to win, and not over pressuring, but not giving up on a play. And then
they do that.
Yeah.
Extremely impressed with Ottawa, to be honest. Like, Jake Sanderson is a guy.
Oh, yeah.
He is a guy. Their defensive core last night weathered the storm. Obviously, Allmark throws up a goose egg. If there's any team the Leafs probably didn't want to play, It was the Ottawa Senators because they can win the emotional battle. And going into Game 6, oh my God. You just don't know what you're going to get out of the Toronto Maple Leafs in the playoffs.
Isn't that beautiful?
They break, well, not my heart, but they break the Leaf fans' hearts in different ways every year.
Elsewhere in the East, Tampa Bay, within a span of, what was it, like 11 seconds, gave up a 1-goal lead in the third, where they were on course to tie the series 2-2, and Florida does Florida things, turns it around, scores twice in, under 15 seconds or whatever it was. They go up 3-1 in that series, and that's with now Aaron Ekblad delivered a forearm shiver. Aaron Ekblad just coming back from a PED suspension. Delivers a forearm shiver to a dude's face, gets a 2-game suspension. Who was it? Nico Mikkola boarded Zemgus Girgensons. I watched that replay and I saw the initial hit. I'm like, where's the boarding? And then
he came back for seconds.
Girgensons was already on his knees, like, just off the boards, facing away, and Mikkola could not have committed to a hit to a defensive player's head backwards harder if he tried. I was like, oh my God, dude, what is wrong with the Panthers? Nothing. They're up 3-1. They're just sickos.
So, to jump on the boomer violence train here, when you have a team like Florida who is so relentless, and we've spent years praising them and how aggressive they are, it's because they have this sicko mindset. They're gonna do dumb stuff like this constantly because they are that team that is out for blood, and they are going to cross the line. Because that Mikkola hit, 11 out of 10 on the stupid scale. Like, there's never a reality where you should even think of throwing that hit. Florida doesn't care. They're just out there to make life hell in any way they can for their opponent. And yeah, they're going to do stupid crap like that from time to time. And that's the trade-off you get with it. Because that series has been like, oh my God. What, 2 suspensions and a couple fines so far?
I think there could be way more.
They're only 4 games in.
Is the first round insane this year?
Yes.
Like,
it's great.
Like, there's so many, like Brad said, 11 out of 10 dumb hits, plays with that. You're like, is that a suspension or not? It feels like what's in the water this year in the NHL?
Well, in Florida, do you want to know?
Anyhow.
Florida, I think, to me, has become the most hated team in the NHL by a mile.
And they love it.
Oh, yeah. Their egos, and they rise to the occasion when people hate them. And the fact that Aaron Ekblad didn't even get a penalty on the play and stays in the game, man, Tampa fans are probably so pissed off.
And you know what? At the end of the day, it's Tampa to blame.
If that's Toronto-Ottawa, Toronto burns to the ground. If that happens, if that hit was on Mitch Marner, Toronto burns to the ground. There's nothing left.
If that just happens within 50 miles of Montreal, Montreal burns to the ground. They just like riding.
They start up a class action lawsuit. They find Aaron Ekblad's family, hold them hostage. It's over.
Well, let's talk about Montreal, Washington. That series is 3-1 Washington. Game 4 was being played as we recorded last. And, Washington ended up winning. But that Tom Wilson hit is like Umberger Campbell levels hard hit in the playoffs. That is one of the hardest hits I've seen in my life. He deleted him.
Oh, yeah. It was shades of Nicholas Cronwell just deleting Martin Havlat.
Right through him. I could not, and it led directly to the goal. Like, I could not believe, and he kept it clean. Like, for sure you had to watch a replay and make sure, but he kept it clean.
That hit, I think, maybe sealed the series for Washington.
Changed unless Montreal finds a miracle here, it changed everything.
They saw a guy die, basically.
We always said if Tom Wilson finds a way to rein it in where he wasn't getting suspended every few games, he'd be a game changer. And hey, that little difference of catching the guy directly in the face versus the chest, it's a big difference. No penalty on the play. Montreal got distracted. Montreal got rattled. Washington scores a goal, 3-1 series.
Unbelievable. Carolina moves on. They beat New Jersey 4-1, a multi-overtime goal last night to seal it. And honestly, with New Jersey, I think most people had Carolina moving on here regardless with the way they played this season. New Jersey with no Jack Hughes, also remarkably injured, even in the series. Like, they were close to, like, Justin Holl was about to dress for them on defense. That's how, beat up they were. So that is what it is. I don't think that one's entirely a surprise.
No, yeah, that series, despite having a lot of close games, never felt close, if that sounds fair to say.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like it was Carolina's the whole time. And again, you can only feel bad for New Jersey because I think with Jack Hughes and a little more health, that's a very different series. So, for their sake, take it as motivation in the offseason and see how they respond next season.
They'll add some depth. They'll get Quinn Hughes in there. Unite the Hughes trio, and they'll go on their deep cup run.
Yeah.
It was a cursed season for the Devils. They just couldn't stay healthy, couldn't get it together. The fact that they got one game off of Carolina is impressive. Feel bad for that team, but I think I had them winning the Metro at the start of the season. So things just didn't go well for them. Those things happen. I don't expect them to fall off a cliff.
They did give up a 3-goal lead in that game, which was a tough look on how to lose it. But like we said, Carolina's just a much better team. Vegas wins 2 straight games to flip a 2-1 series deficit to a 3-2 series lead, and overtime win last night over Minnesota. So that series remains close. Dallas up 3-2 for Colorado, who at points looked like the Colorado of old. So that series is living up to it, and Winnipeg St. Louis remains 2-2. So the playoffs they've been weird for sure. Something's in the water, absolutely. But yeah, it's been entertaining. So curious to see how it ends. I think you have, if I could pick one result for any series, I just want the Battle of Florida to go to 7. I think it would be a disappointment if that one ended in 5 or 6 to me. I want to see Tampa Bay make a series of it.
I need the Battle of Ontario to go to Game 7 just for the entertainment value. Actually, speaking of Evans, hearing whispers in the jungle, I think Connor Hellebuck's right in the middle of that jungle right now.
Yeah, we haven't even. I don't.
Last episode we
talked a little bit about that. Yeah. Oh my God, man.
And it just keeps getting worse. Like, oh my God, man.
St. Louis isn't like we talked about it. They weren't going to come into this playoffs and be any kind of slouch. I thought they'd give Winnipeg a series, and it's tied. It's not over or anything, but Hellebuck's going to have to shake a narrative fast.
He's had 1 good game out of 4. He's given up, 4+ in every other game. Like, even in the 1 win they had, that's a tough look.
You know what needs to happen? His team, he needs 1 more good game, and his team just needs to bail him out on the other one. Help your guy out. All right. Elsewhere in the NHL, but off the ice, a couple huge pieces of coaching news. First off, Rick Tocchet is not returning as head coach of the Vancouver Canucks. The team had a team option on him, which means they could have, picked up another year on his contract, but they acknowledged that they weren't going to do that if he didn't want to be there. They made a healthy offer to him that would have made him one of the highest paid coaches in the league, and Rick Tocchet is deciding to move on for one reason or another.
If that doesn't scream organizational dysfunction, I don't know what does.
So, look out, Philly, New York, wherever, but that's
Anaheim.
Tocchet just screams Philly. We've already heard the rumors.
Yeah.
I think all roads lead to Philadelphia for him. He's not turning down that contract if he doesn't already have a pretty good idea of where he's landing.
And it's tough because Quinn Hughes, the guy you're trying to keep and admitting in the media that you might not be able to if you're Jim Rutherford, was very vocal about, loving Rick Tocchet and having had multiple coaches in the past and seeing the dysfunction. He's like, no, we need Rick Tocchet. You're not able to retain him. You're already talking about, potentially losing Hughes because he wants to play with his brothers.
If you had to put a % chance on Quinn Hughes leaving Vancouver, what would you say that number is?
I'd honestly
as of today,
north of 70%.
Wow.
I was going to go close to 90. Like
over the course of 2 years, a lot can happen. Absolutely.
Especially in Vancouver.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm definitely north of 50% right now. When you lose your coach, the team is in a complete mess internally. And there's already rumors of Quinn Hughes making statements about wanting to play with his brothers. Yeah. Man, Vancouver's about to enter a rebuild, it feels like.
And here's the thing. If you want to keep Quinn Hughes, he's going to... The only way to do it, because every day between now and 2 years from now, or 3 years from now, and 4 years from now, his brothers are still going to be his brothers. He's going to still wake up being related to them. He's still going to want to play with them. The only thing you can do to change it is to win enough where it's like, yeah, you're not going to leave a cup contending team.
They have not set themselves up to do that.
They're absolutely not in a position to do that before his contract expires.
They're in one of the worst positions in the NHL to say they can do that.
Remind me quickly, where did Luke and Quinn go to college?
Michigan.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, they're going to go back? They still have years of eligibility?
Yeah, they saw that all that NIL money. They're like, hold on. Wait a second here. Yeah, everyone's going to regroup in Detroit is what we're saying.
Yes.
Somehow Detroit's going to trade for all three Hughes brothers.
Yeah, it's been the are they going to play together in Vancouver or New Jersey argument. Let's explore some other options here, people. There's time.
I have a friend who, is more into the Lions and Pistons and like knows them inside out. With the Red Wings, he kind of like checks in with me to have an understanding of stuff. Sometimes sent me this like 2-minute long voice note on how, the Red Wings could potentially trade for Jack Hughes and like you do this and you do that. And then afterwards I said, okay, so what about Luke? And he was like, oh, what? I was like, yeah, there's another one also quite good. It's not going to be an easy task. It's in New Jersey's hand here. As long as New Jersey's like basically doesn't alienate their Hugheses, it's all for them. And Jim Rutherford, what did he say this time in his presser? He's like, yeah, usually Quinn gets back to me right away, so I hope he's golfing because I haven't heard from him yet.
Oh my God.
After Rick Tocchet, they announced that he wasn't coming back.
Everybody's checking their phone on the golf course. Everyone's checking their phone.
I got the Walman trade news right after I teed off at 1. Which that was a miserable round, let me tell you. But I love Rutherford so much, man. I hope he stays forever. If Vancouver fires him, I'll never forgive the Aquilinis. Ever.
I'll never forgive the NHL if they don't stick a camera in his face 24/7 next season.
Well, what do you say, Evan? Like, this is the drive to survive. Just stick him in Vancouver.
Yeah, I said if there was any year for the NHL to have a drive to survive, it would have been this past season. They would just film Vancouver the whole time, and Rutherford would have let them stay at his house.
He would have been the executive producer on it.
Yeah, he's the star of the show.
6 a.m. in the morning, he's waking up the cameraman and the producers. I have something to say.
He's like, no more, please stop.
It's a 45 episode season. Each episode is 120 minutes long. He's like, hold on. You can't really make out my voice in that trade conversation. Let me redub that over. I can really get this good. Oh, other coaching news. Mike Sullivan out as Pittsburgh Penguins head coach. They agree to part ways, which is big. Like, he is a very, very, very long tenured coach, and he's going to be an attractive name. New York is going to be all over that. Anaheim, every team. Chicago, now that they weren't able to land Carl, they're probably going to be all over that. Like, you have two huge names out there in terms of available coaches, and they're going to command big bucks.
I was thinking about David Carl lately with all the coaching vacancies, and I think it would have to be a monster deal for him to want to leave the security, the safety, and the comfortness of Denver. He's a name that I would imagine a team like Anaheim would be throwing big bucks at him. They're a young team coming up. It's a team he could really mold. There's not a lot of guys who are stuck in their ways. But yeah, there's some very interesting coaching storylines going into next season.
And with Carl, he pulled himself out of the Chicago, candidacy because it's not just money he wants to win. Like, yeah, he's comfortable, man, and he'll hold out. You know what I actually think here is that with Tocchet and Sullivan being out there, there's a potential big reset coming in with coaching salary again. It's in his best interest to wait until that reset happens. Because at the end of the day, he's still coming in as an unproven NHL head coach. If and when he chooses to, make your baseline higher, because the NHL coaching carousel is getting shorter and shorter and faster, and I think stupider in terms of how quick teams are to move on. So why throw yourself into that ring for less money when you have it good in Denver? Absolutely right. Where everyone will end up, there's a ton of vacancies. Boston, Anaheim, Chicago, the Rangers, the Flyers, now the Penguins, Seattle, Vancouver, like in some big markets, some markets with a lot of stars coming up, some markets who are going to be, you're going to be in the trenches. Like, who's Vancouver going to be able to land now? Oh man.
That coach knows that they're lame duck basically going into that situation.
Yeah, because if you have 2.5 years on average and you're in the position Vancouver's in, how are you going to say, yeah, I'm going to be here on the other side? I'm going to be the next Cooper or Sullivan and be here for a decade, you know?
It's a conversation people don't like talking about, but this might be the time that Joel Quenneville comes back into the NHL with all the vacancies and bad scenarios that coaches might have to walk into in terms of rebuilding teams. This might be the summer we see something like that happen.
Linked to Anaheim.
Yeah.
And yeah, the reaction to that one is strong, to put it lightly. Okay, why don't we jump into our prospect profile here? Today's 2025 NHL Draft Prospect Profile is none other than Jackson Smith, keeping on the trend of left-handed defensemen, Tri-City Americans, and an interesting player that I think a lot of Red Wings fans have their eyes on potentially as a pick for them to bolster their top four, be that left shot defense answer alongside Simon Edvinsson on the blue line. Is Jackson Smith an ideal pick for you around pick 12 if you're the Red Wings?
I don't think he's going to get that far, but if he does, he should very much be in consideration. I know we talked about Cam Reed last profile, and there's a lot of similar traits between him and Jackson Smith. The difference being Jackson Smith is 6'3", and I feel like he's shown flashes of a dynamic element that a lot of defensemen in this draft don't have. He can make some plays that raise your eyebrow, go, oh, that was not something a lot of 17-year-olds should be able to do. And he's got the well-rounded profile, good skater, good hands, good hockey IQ, can put up offense, I think he was over 50 points this year as a 17-year-old defenseman in the WHL, which is crazy impressive. Not sure how well that offense will translate up levels, but given the flashes you see and the size, it leads me to believe I think it's going to. I don't know if he's a power play 1 guy in the NHL, but maybe a power play 2 guy at worst. Yeah, if you can get good defending out of him at the pro level with his toolkit and his smarts and his offense, there could be a real player there.
I think the one thing I like the most about Jackson Smith is his work ethic. I think he fits the Steve Yzerman Red Wings mold perfectly. Like, this kid works his ass off all game. He makes second, third, fourth attempts in the defensive zone to box guys out, to get the puck, to win board battles. He's big. He's already like almost 200 pounds with more to add. And he has the potential to add an offensive dynamic at the NHL caliber. For me, the fit makes too much sense for the Red Wings. If he comes in and is a number 3 guy, can develop his offensive game a little bit, he could maybe play PP2. He'll provide some offense at 5-on-5, and he's got those intangibles away from the puck that it just makes way too much sense from a Red Wings perspective. He would be one of my first picks for the Red Wings.
You ever have that coach growing up where he doesn't really ever speak in detail? He just speaks in like coaching hockey platitudes where he just like smacks you real hard on the back. You're like, that's a good player. It's a big, strong player. He plays the game the right way. That's a dude. That's a guy. But that's just what Jackson Smith is.
Yeah.
He's, for all the reasons you guys laid out, I think he already does a lot of things well, but I agree in that the areas in which he's unrefined, it doesn't scare me because I think, 1, he has potential. He can be kind of shaped with the right development into the kind of player who could be an impact player offensively and defensively. And 2, at least the tools are there, you know? So if he's not the kind of guy who can put it together all the time the way a top pairing defenseman can, you kind of see, okay, well, it could be a sometimes kind of thing. And he can be a second option on offense, and he can be reliable more or less on defense, even if it's not 27 minutes a night kind of thing. And you have to love the way he skates, the way he competes, how hard he plays, the size, like Evan said. Like, fair or unfair, guys like Cameron Reed's a great defenseman. And again, I would be happy if he ends up in the Red Wings organization. But this is where Jackson Smith's abilities, yes, but also tools that even aren't proficiencies of his, plus his size, I think that's a differentiator. And that's where I actually agree with Brett. I think these are going to be too attractive to other teams to pass up on. I would be surprised if he gets to 12, but I really like that pick for the Red Wings if he's there at 12. I think that's a fantastic option. Not a guarantee. Like, I've seen guys like this fizzle out and not put it together at all and become a third pair or a journeyman or not.
God, that'd be a great thing for the Red Wings right now. A third pairing defenseman? Yeah. Oh, my God.
Pick 12, he'd be a little sad, but again, there's worse outcomes. Philip Zadina is playing in like the Nordic 5th League right now or whatever. So, poor Philip Zadina catching a stray. What'd I do that for? But I think Jackson Smith has all the makings of a guy who can be that top 4 answer. Maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, but that's the kind of swing I'd be happy to take on defense.
The whole time we've been having this conversation, and this is completely off topic, every time we say his name, I hear Njigba after his name, just because he plays out in Washington and the football player.
No, I'm like Evan right now. You pass
okay.
my...
All right, no, that's fair. No, yeah, I think the question with him for me, when we relate it specifically to Detroit, would be what would his role be? Because I think if he can truly hit, he could probably anchor his own pair on defense in the NHL. But he's a lefty, so he probably doesn't play with Edvinsson. So do you put him on the third pair? And is that good value for 12th overall? Or is this the guy to play with Seider? And there are a lot of similarities between him and Seider's game. I don't think he's as physical as Seider is, but in terms of he'll jump into the play, he can make a pass, he can play a little bit of offense. That's very similar to Seider. So I don't hate the thought of having 2 players on that pairing, but he would be very interesting in how he gets deployed if the Red Wings take him.
For me, he is top 10 candidate, move up candidate for sure, especially with Schaefer being essentially the only defenseman inside the top 10 right now. If obviously he will go very early, and if there are other teams who are high on Smith or really need to build out their defensive pipeline, there's a big chance that he goes way earlier than 12. So might not even be an option for Detroit.
I think him, Aitchison, and Murtka might actually all be great defensemen, but also great decoys to help the Red Wings in the draft, because my preference is still a forward. And I think all 3 of them might go before Detroit get there, which
that can work out well. That would suck to lose out on one of those 3 guys because I like all their skill set, but it's a blessing in disguise as well because there's some dynamic forwards then dropping towards 12.
Exactly. Exactly. So we should just spend the next few months gassing these guys up as much as we can and just like dumping all over like Jake O'Brien or Roger McQueen, be like, nah, I wouldn't risk it. And then, hopefully it spreads the seeds of doubt and then they grow and, maybe we get lucky.
All right, that is Jackson Smith, this episode's 2025 NHL Draft Prospect Profile. We are going to take another quick break here. When we're back, the final segment on the Winged Wheel Podcast. Back after this.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Again, the bonus episodes, we're going to start this one with a fun blooper from Evan. You already forget it. Brad and I were cracking up.
Okay.
The giveaways, the Discord, all of that, and lots more. Some questions from our patrons to start us off. Joseph Barry says, are you guys worried about Cossa right now because of the recent down play?
No.
Just like that confident?
He's so young, and let's not forget, the Grand Rapids Griffins are an extremely young AHL team. The AHL is for the teams that have success most of the time are the veterans, the guys who've been there, the pros. This is just a blip on the radar.
I mean, there's always some level of concern with any goaltending prospect given the position and the volatility of development in said position. The negative of that is you never really know what you're going to get till you get it. The positive is when you have a blip like this, well, that just goes along with the position, so it's not anything to read too much into.
Also says, with Yzerman pretty much shutting down the idea of an offer sheet, what's a realistic package to get K'Andre Miller from the Rangers? So Yzerman shut down the idea of an offer sheet, but a GM is also never going to project that they're going to try to sign an offer sheet. What Yzerman said wasn't wrong. He's like, you almost never get the player based on how the compensation packages are set up and what you'd have to pay. He thought Holloway and Broberg especially are now going to tip teams off to protecting against it, and the rising cap is going to make it harder. But I wouldn't rule it out. But what would it take to get K'Andre Miller? You're going to try to put a pin on how volatile the Rangers are right now? Best of luck. I don't think K'Andre Miller would come cheap, though.
No, you're probably looking at your 2026 first-round pick, I would think.
That's at the very least what the ask could be.
Yeah.
D-Boss was at the Griffins game last night. My biggest takeaway was that ASP probably needs a year in Grand Rapids. Seemed to struggle with the smaller ice and the physicality. It's early, but yeah, that seems to be the initial.
He's played a ton of hockey too, right?
Yeah. So if that's what happens, that's like the most likely outcome. We talked all year that he'd have an outside shot at challenging, but he's going to have a big summer, a lot of time in the weight room, getting comfortable with the game. We'll see how long the playoffs go for Grand Rapids, and that, it could just be like a rust or a acclimation period, but wouldn't be surprising, and it wouldn't be a bad thing either. Like, that was always going to be the path for this kid. Jack's dad says, in quotes, "We're prepared to trade any players." Stevie came out firing to be a fly on the wall during his conversation with Larkin. Also, t-shirt idea, no and no. Given that Edvinsson should have come up way earlier last year, Marco should have started the year with the Wings, and Albert should have been given steady minutes from the start, will Yzerman be less hesitant to bring up young players to see what he's got? While ASP would be fun, he'll probably need more time to develop as much physically as getting his timing down to the North American game, but I wonder if MBN might be a good gamble, especially if given a chance to play with the skill guys. Overall, I see what you're saying. I will contend, I think Albert Johansson needed time to get attuned to. Like, he was getting banged up physically a lot last year. Even after he was settled into his minutes, he was still, having to work through that. But in general, I agree. And maybe, but like, Johansson made it up at the very end. Like, they pretty much said, we're bringing him up because he's no longer waiver exempt and he's too good to send through waivers, but they weren't sure. Kasper earned his way. I don't really see the Red Wings rushing anyone. MBN would have to have a pretty impressive preseason to do so.
I think Danielson's still ahead on the pecking order, especially because his preseason last year was quite good, and I think the one before that was quite good and unexpected. So, yeah, the Red Wings have never just given a spot to anyone, really. Well, they don't give them to the young guys, but I wouldn't be surprised if they think someone's almost there, that Detroit could be the spot and they can just refine it out at the start of the season.
Danielson's also, like, just to call it out, Danielson's not guaranteed the spot next year.
No.
It makes sense for the next step, but if he has a poor, camp and preseason, they're not going to give him the spot. He'd have to do essentially what Kasper did and come in and play as expected based on his age and development. I think Danielson is poised to do that, but I think there's ways where he mirrored Kasper's season last season, and there's ways where his performance hasn't come up to scuff, and people have been a bit concerned that he might need more time. Not concerned like red flags, but they're like, yeah, we're not going to just rush him in because we all think it's time, kind of thing. Simon says, 27, says, all right, I'm going to name 3 current players, and you decide if they should be in the Hall of Fame when they retire. I'm terrible at this because I think I always set the bar too high. I think no one should be in the Hall of Fame.
Should be like 5 guys ever.
Yeah. 1, TJ Oshie.
No.
No.
I think
unless it was for shootout goals, then yes.
Yeah, maybe
he'd be first ballot, no doubter.
I think no to TJ Oshie as well. 2, Ryan O'Reilly.
Oh, that one gets tough.
He's got the Conn Smythe, which helps, but my initial
World Championship.
My initial gut feeling was no. I think he's just kind of like, but I think he also, you could make a case he's in that Zetterberg tier, who we agree should be in. But then again, Zetterberg had a couple years where he was at the tippy top of the NHL. O'Reilly's never had that level of dominance. So I'm going to lean on the side of no.
He has World Championship gold and World Cup of Hockey gold. I don't know that he has World Junior gold.
Really?
Yeah.
That's shocking.
Yeah. I'm going to lean towards no as well for O'Reilly. Although he's the kind of guy where if he ever got in with like a down year, he'd be like, okay, yeah, I understand. 3, Ryan Suter. I just can't imagine Ryan Suter gets in, right?
He used the wood stick when one-piece sticks were coming in. He should be in the Hall of Fame just for that.
Actually, yeah, that's a
being able
move.
to play still in the NHL.
Yeah.
He's still in the NHL and was using a wood stick at one point. So that's a testament to his longevity.
You know how every generation is like, God, the kids these days don't know how it was back then? The kids these days will never understand thing is Al MacInnis with a wood stick from the point. And that is still to this day, I don't care how hard Shea Weber shot it at his peak. There was no more dangerous shot from the point in my entire life that I watched growing up than Al MacInnis.
They couldn't let stick technology advance because if they did, Al MacInnis would be killing people.
It's funny, you know how you have like stories passed down from like your parents and all that you always go, oh, you're absolutely over exaggerating this one. There's no way. My dad actually had seasons tickets to the Kitchener Rangers when he was a kid. When Al MacInnis was on the Rangers, behind the opponent's net for the first and third period.
That is a dangerous place.
They had no netting. He said it was unreal how nobody died when MacInnis. And I'm like, I hear that and I'm like, sure, Dad, whatever. And then I'll go back and I'll watch the MacInnis highlights. I'm like, no, yeah, I'm amazed nobody died.
That's why there's a dent in your forehead. You inherited it from your dad.
Yeah.
That's how that works. Oh man, just waxing, but we're just turning in. We're turning into the hockey old heads that we often criticize. That's just us now. Patrick J says Stevie was pretty pointed at not being happy with the signings who were on multi-year contracts. It sounded like he had no plans to move or buy out anyone, though. Do you believe he was mincing words, or is it likely he moves anyone out? Like we said in the body of the show, I think it's too early to commit to that. I don't think you can glean anything in terms of actual action from those words because he would never say it, right? Like he's not going to come out and say, yeah, there are going to be big changes. Because one, you can't guarantee that. It's the NHL. If no one takes the contract, some of them don't make sense to buy out. If you want to trade them, you don't want to advertise that you want to get rid of these guys. Like you never know, and you can't take too much away from his words. I have to imagine the intention is for at least some change. And my understanding is that he has tried to move out one of the longer contracts on multiple different occasions with, I think, at least one time there was a blocked move based on a 10-team no trade. But I'm talking over a span of like multiple years here, so don't try to pin it down to one trade. There's so much noise around this, you can never say for sure. But yeah, I wouldn't get too hung up on what he said in terms of action.
Yeah, if in terms of buyout and trade, sure. Let's not forget, for a lot of these guys, especially with only 1 year left on the contract, Grand Rapids is an option. If they don't perform well in camp and they get beat out by a Wallinder or a Danielson, there's no reason that you can't send a Holl to Grand Rapids again or something like that.
Last one here, Joshua Valance's thoughts on hypothetically signing Fabro. What do you think his contract would be? He just finished a 1 year, $2.5 million, I think it was, and did decently in terms of production, moving out to Columbus, right shot, 26, 27 years old. Depending on what your options are on the right side, I don't hate it.
Yeah, he seems like one of the better right-handed options out there. Again, I haven't done a deep dive on him. I haven't really done any ton of free agency work, but when I was creating an initial list of defensemen I would be interested in if I was Steve Yzerman, I put him on the list because of the age, the production. I think he did well enough this year that he's going to be more expensive than people realize, but I'd rather spend that money on a 26, 27-year-old than a 31, 32-year-old.
Well, if you want to do that, there's also another RFA available who showed some promise. It's Dennis Cholowski. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of him.
Shut up, dude. All right, we're not doing that. We're going to wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. Thank you all so very much for tuning in. We're going to be back with you on the weekend. Appreciate all of these sponsors of the Winged Wheel Podcast, and to all of you tuning into the show for the first time, welcome to the show. Welcome to the off season, and to our listeners of old, it's going to be a fun off season. I believe in it. Why? Because I need it to be. To all of our Patreon supporters, we can't thank you enough. Patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to support the show. And if you want to support us, but Patreon's not for you, totally cool. It's also a huge help if you just subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Leave a rating or a review, whether it's the thumbs up or stars or writing a review. Tell a friend about the show. All of that is a huge, huge help to us. To our name level supporters on Patreon, you are our everything. Evan sings songs about you, writes poetry about you. Arjun Shankar, Ease Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, THL Champ, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Glenn Brabham, Sea Lion, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Zuiza, Admiral Matt S. at the Cheesebag Navy, Alex Toger, Anna Sleeman, Asher Killian, Beer League Legend, Best James Bond, Bingo Bango, Carl, Brutanen Analuski, CB55, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, Give Blood, Fight Probert, Grand Rapids Girly, Griffin God Creatives, Hatrick Sandin Pellikka, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, James McLean, a.k.a. Jambo, Jeff Pridemore, Jennifer Morris, John Ingalls, Jonathan Miller, Kaylin Wood, Mark Hernandez, Marty, Matt McKay, Michael Edlin, Mr. Kuzi, Now I Have to Learn How to Click on a Macintosh, Podgy713, R.A., Richard Perkins, Roy Donk, Ryan Britt, Sam Bankston, Slim Smitty Cards, Stephen Ortlieb, That's What I Appreciates About You, Tiger McDougal, Wallman's Elite Dancing D, Wings Fan Chicago, Iserplan Stan, Aaron Hudson, General, Indy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, A. Aaron, Ads Off the Jerseys, Ads Off the Helmets, Ads Off the Ice, Capitalism is Buns, Marx was Right, All Motor No Hands, Ann Stanislavski, Big Starfish, Bellingham Acid Balls, Bex, C.E. Hayes, Chris Felinski, Clay Adams, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Layton, Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Drop the Puck, Dylan Larkin, Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Evan Beckner, Evans, Brown, Pomeranian, Gene Sullivan, Grepsky, Griffey Boy, James Pridemore, Johnny Page, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim, JM Rhapsody, Josh Yelton, Just Your Typical Champagne and Oyster Party, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hull, Lonnie Zone, Lucas Raymond, Matt Keeler, Mitch Minier, Ophelia, Osgozagets, Roy Mudbutt, Ryan M, Sadden, Soderblom Worshipper, Joey Jojo Shabadoo, Sandy P, Right Hand D, Steven, That Other Guy, The Hodag, The People's Elbow is Legal in the Playoffs, The Hat 123, Trent Thorough, Tubing is Unbelievable, Wings Fan in St. Louis, Scott, our good friend, and your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.